a mixed flow today, so you're not going to need any equipment, and we're actually going to start on our fronts today. So come and lay on your front. So just rest your heads. So we're going to go through the connection posture breath, but obviously it's going to be a bit different because we are on our fronts. So just lie on your front with your arms up above your head, and you want your arms to be in this sort of diamond or sort of triangle shape. Elbows in line with your ears, and we're just going to think about the connection first of all. So where we should be feeling connected is the front of the thighs, the pubic bone, and the forearms, and that medial epicondyle of the elbow, and at the moment the forehead. So we're just going to start down for the pubic symphysis. So what we're going to start to do is just tilt the pelvis backwards and forwards. So we're tilting backwards and then forwards. As we go backwards, you'll feel the pubic bone start to press more into the floor, and as you go forwards, the pubic bone will lift off the floor. So forwards and backwards. And then I want you to just pause in the midpoint, and your pubic bone should feel like it's pressing into the floor a bit more. What you don't want to do is squeeze your bum together, so you don't want to be squeezing your bum cheeks to get the pubic bone down onto the floor. We're just trying to use our abdominal muscles, our core, to do that movement. And you're just going to pause with the pubic bone pressing more into the floor, and you should have a neutral spine when you do that. So you're probably going to be feeling that the lower ribs are pressing into the floor. We don't want this. So what you want, because we still want to have that pelvic floor and diaphragm connection. So we still want that closed book. So think of the rib cage and pelvis like the pages of a book. So we're going to try and bring the ribs and pelvis into connection. So just try and scooch your rib cage off the floor and bring that into connection with the pelvic floor, with the pelvis. And then the shoulders, they don't want to be up by your ears. So we're going to do that external rotation and depression of the shoulder blades, as if we're trying to bring the shoulder blade down towards the back pocket. And the head, again, is just going to be in a neutral position, so we don't want the head to be extended, so where your chin is just pressing into the floor. So the forehead wants to be down on the floor. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do the 360 breath, but we're going to try it, because we've not got our hands to use today to try and feel that expansion. But what we can do is feel the tummy pressing into the floor. So we're just going to try and get the breath in the right order first of all. So you're going to breathe in, and you're going to feel the tummy expand into the floor. Breathe out, feel the tummy lift up off the floor, or lift away from the floor. If your shoulders do get a little bit tired from being in this position, you can just bring your arms down by your sides. But we want to try and get that activation of the shoulders, so starting to stabilise the shoulders in this position. So feel that expansion of the tummy into the floor and the breath in. And then relaxation on the breath out. Close your eyes, try and just visualise what's happening. Those abdominal wall muscles expanding outwards and pushing into the floor as you breathe in. And relaxing on the breath out. Remember, try and keep the ribs and pelvis in connection. So we're keeping the pubic bone on the floor, keeping the ribs and pelvis connected. Don't squeeze the bum cheeks, don't squeeze the hamstrings, don't squeeze the calves. So your legs want to be nice and relaxed while you're doing this. Okay, so now we've got the breath in the right order, we're really going to have to concentrate and visualise on what's happening now. So we want to try and create that 360-degree breath. So we're going to need to really think about all those abdominal wall muscles expanding on the breath in and relaxing on the breath out. Suppose you can actually just bring your hands around your waist if you want to. So the arms aren't going to be in front of the head. Just to get that activation so that you know which muscles you're breathing into. So just put your hands around your waist and cough. And feel those muscles expand. And then relax on the breath out. Keep the pubic bone pressed into the floor, ribs and pelvis connected. Body wants to be equal from front to back and from side to side. What you don't want to do in this position is just let your lower back fall into an extended position. So anterior pelvic tilt and lumbar extension, because your back is just going to get uncomfortable doing this. So you need to try and make sure that you're maintaining that neutral pelvis and neutral lower back. Keep expanding 360 degrees. Do one more. Okay, so now we want to create the brace. So we're not clenching or tensing, we're not pulling the belly button towards the spine. We're going to create our 360 breath. And then before we take the breath out, you're going to create that outward push, like you're imagining that you're about to fart. And try and keep that muscle activation on the breath out now. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, through pursed lips. Imagine you're blowing through a straw. Just do a couple more breaths. Okay, so we're just going to start, before we start to lift up, just doing some hip extensions. So we're going to just lift up one of your legs, so you're going to try and use your bum muscles to extend the hip. What you don't want to do is just extend through the lower back, just to try and get the hip and the leg a little bit higher. So you're only going to go as far as you can with that hip, using your bum muscle and not your lower back. And then do the opposite side. So alternating legs at the minute. Keep breathing, your 360 breath. Try not to let your pelvis tilt too much as you're doing this. So the pelvis is staying in the same position. And this extension is coming through the hip. So the foot is going up towards the ceiling. Just do a couple more. Remember to keep the ribs and pelvis connected. Try not to let the lumbar spine extend. And then bring the arms round by your sides. And then up over your head. So we're abducting the shoulders. And then back down. Try not to let your pelvis tilt anterior and lower back go into extension. So we're holding our good posture with our core. And then bring your arms back down by your sides. And then you're going to pull your hands up close to your body and then take them forwards, like we're going into shoulder flexion. And then pull them back down by your sides. And then bring them up and push them forwards. Still keeping that neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. This is kind of like a breaststroke as we take the hands up over your head. And then take them up over your head, and you're just going to do single shoulder flexion off the floor. So one arm, one leg, and one arm, one leg, one arm then the other. Again, trying to keep the ribs and pelvis connected. And then if you can, try and do one arm, one leg at the same time. So it'd be opposite arm, opposite leg. Don't extend the lower back, so only lift the leg as high as you can. using your bum muscle. Just do one more each side. Okay, bring your arms back into your diamond. So your elbows are going to be in line with your ears. Make sure you've got your neutral pelvis, pubic bone pressing into the floor, ribs connected with the pelvis. So your lower rib cage is going to be off the floor. Create a 360 breath, and then you're just going to push the floor away with the forearms and lift the head off the floor, but try and keep your neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. So what I don't want is for you to just sink into lumbar extension, because that's just painful. So keep your neutral pelvis, neutral lower back, and then we're keeping the shoulders active, so externally rotating and depressing. Push the floor away with the forearms. Keep the neck nice and long, and then we're going to just try and think about sinking the upper back down towards the floor. So imagine you've got that piece of string, pulling your chest bone towards the floor, but again, don't just let your lower back collapse into extension. So we want this extension to be happening through here. If you need to have a rest, just go down again. And when you've had a little rest, you're just going to come back up again. We're really trying to lengthen through the spine. Keeping those, so my shoulders are absolutely on fire right now. If you can feel this in your lower back, you are not in a neutral position. So you are probably too extended. So really try and think about bringing that pelvis into a neutral position so that it gets your lower back into a more neutral position. Keep thinking about your breath. Okay, so we're going to go from this 3-month prone position and bring one leg forwards into our 4.5-month prone position. So 4.5-month prone, one leg's going to be extended, the other leg's going to be flexed, and then we're just going to be pushing down with one forearm, so one arm can be completely free. And if you can start doing some rotations. So you're going to rotate the arm up towards the ceiling, so we're creating external rotation in that lower shoulder, and then rotating back round, and up, and round. Try not to let, again, the pelvis fall into the floor and go into lumbar extension. So we're keeping the neutral spine. You're going to push down into the floor with that bent knee. Just do a couple more rotations, and then bring the other leg, the stretch leg forwards into your low quadruped position, and then take the other leg back. So now the opposite leg's going to be extended, and then the same leg that's extended, that forearm is going to be pushing into the floor, and the opposite knee is going to be pushing into the floor. And we're going to stay neutral in the pelvis and lower back. Don't let the back extend, so lift off the floor, try and lengthen through the neck, and then we're just going to rotate round. So up to the ceiling and then reaching. Do one more. Bring that forearm down onto the floor and then bring the other knee up. So we're going into our low quadruped position. So low quadruped, knees are going to be wider than the hips, elbows in line with the ears again. Find your neutral lower back by tilting your pelvis backwards and forwards and just stopping the midpoint. And then we're going to extend the upper back, so lengthening through the spine. So chest bone is being pulled towards the floor with that imaginary piece of string. And try not to let the neck extend. So we're keeping the neck nice and long. Pushing the floor away with the forearms. Try and imagine you want to increase the distance between your elbow and your shoulder. So we're pushing up towards the ceiling. And then hinge your hips backwards. So you're flexing your hip, bum shifting backwards. And we're trying to keep that neutral position of the lower back. And then extend. Making sure that what we don't do is go into this lumbar extension. So flexing backwards, keeping neutral, and then forwards, keeping neutral. Keep breathing your 360 breath. And then you're just going to push yourself up into a quadruped position. And then back down and up. So just lifting and lowering. Make sure you keep your hands completely flat on the floor. And we're going to lift up into quadruped. Again, find your neutral. Upper back nice and long. Push the floor away with your hands. We're trying to lengthen the distance between the wrist and the shoulder now. And then hinge your hips backwards. So we'll flexing the hip, we're folding the hip. What we don't want to do is round the lower back. Keep the neck nice and long, and then we're going to extend the hip, keeping neutral, and then flex. So we're going back again, and forwards. So back and forwards, trying to keep that nice long spine, neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. And then what I want you to do, come into your quadruped. Take one leg slightly forwards, the other leg slightly backwards. Curl the feet under. And then lift your bum in the air. And then we're just going to hinge the hips backwards, fold in the hip, walk the hands backwards into a sort of semi-squat, I guess. So one of your heels is going to be off the floor. And then stand out of that position. And then slowly lower down. And then come back up. Keeping that neutral pelvis. Nice and long, upright through the spine. Then come back down, walk the hands back, lower your knees, and then take the opposite leg forwards. So one leg slightly forwards, one leg slightly back. Curl your feet under and then lift. Slowly walk your hands backwards into your semi-squat and then stand. And down. Again, keeping control of the pelvis and lower back. Nice and slow, up and down. And then down to the floor, walk the hands back, down into your quadruped, and then we're going to go into our proper bear now. So feet underneath, neutral pelvis, neutral lower back, lift the knees, hinge the hips, we're folding at the hip, and then walk the hands backwards. So this time feet are going to be in the same place. And then come up, find your neutral, and slowly down, and up. Have a think about your weight distribution, thinking about as you're going down or coming up, do you feel like you're pushing off or lowering more on one side than the other? Try and get that nice and even between the right and left foot. And we'll just do one more. And then come into your standing position. Take one leg back. Make sure your pelvis is nice and level with the floor. And then we're going to just slowly lower down into our high kneel. Keeping the pelvis level, knee tracking the second and third toe, and then stand up out of that position, and then slowly down. So we are lowering ourselves down for a count of 3. Slowly down. And then we're just going to stand in on one leg, bring the opposite leg up, so 90-degree hip flexion, 90-degree knee flexion, 90-degree ankle flexion, and then try and take that that leg out to the side. And bring it back round. And then do the other side. And slowly out. Trying to get nice and balanced on that supporting foot. Nice and controlled, nice and coordinated. Try and push your big toe down into the floor to get more balance. Just do one more of those. Then you're going to take that leg back again, so that left leg, oh right leg, sorry, whichever leg you did the first time backwards, you're going to take it back, slowly down. Take your hands down to the floor, into your tripod, and just hinge backwards. So, making sure that you only go as far back as your back knee will allow. So try and lengthen through the upper back. So if you only just want to go this far, that's fine. You don't have to go all the way back. Keep nice and long through the spine. Try not to let yourself just round, so a lengthening. Chest bone coming towards the floor. And now take that front foot back into there and take the other leg forwards. And we're going to be tripoding again. So, tripod hinge. Lengthen through the spine. Again, only go as far back as your back knee will allow. Okay, you're going to come up into your high kneel again, but on the opposite side. Make sure we're not too narrow, foot out to the side, pelvis level with the floor, neutral pelvis, knee tracking second and third toe, and stand. And then slowly lower down. So as you bring your leg back to lower yourself back down, make sure you don't go super narrow, so you want to be out to the side. Make sure your big toe is pressing into the floor. Make sure you reset, and you slowly down. Try and control what's happening in your pelvis, so as you come up, you don't just shoot out to the side, and you don't just collapse on the way down. So we want the pelvis to stay level with the floor the whole time. Just do another couple. And now from this high kneel position, put your hand down, bring your leg back round into your high oblique sit. And then forearm down to the floor, into your low oblique sit, onto your side, into your 3-month supine, and then you're going to roll. So we want to fingertips pointed to the ceiling, create your breath and your brace, and we're just going to roll onto the opposite side, up into low oblique sit, up into high oblique sit. And then slowly lower back down, roll onto your back, into 3-month supine, roll onto the opposite side, into low oblique, high oblique. So you're just going to go through that from side to side now. And what you want to make sure is that you don't just, you're not banana in your spine, you're not putting the shoulder forward, so we're keeping nice and long through the spine. Active shoulder, slowly down, up, round to the opposite direction. With the rolling, you want to make sure that your shoulders and your pelvis are moving at the same time. So you've got your Lego body, and you're controlling that movement. So you're not just flopping and throwing yourself up. And just do one more each side. And then you're going to roll back onto your back into your 3-month supine. So we want to make sure that we've got our neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. So there shouldn't be any gap underneath our lower backs. Lower back should be flat on the floor, but it shouldn't be caved into the floor. 3-month supine, you want your feet higher than your knees. Ankles in a neutral position, so they're just not pointed, they're not out to the side, they're not turning inwards. So they're coming up towards the head slightly. And you want your feet higher than your knees over your hips. Hips abducted and externally rotated. And we're just going to hold this position. Focus on our breath. Make sure that the neck's in a neutral position, you're not going into neck extension. And then we're just going to start to tap one toe to the floor and then the opposite toe to the floor. And then if you can, if your back's feeling okay, you're going to do double toe taps. So lifting and lowering, and we are keeping that neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. Don't let your pelvis tilt forwards or backwards as you're lifting and lowering. Create your 360 breath and your brace. And then lower your legs down towards the floor. Take your arms back over your head, keeping the ribs and pelvis connected. And then back down. So when you're taking your arms back over your head, you're keeping the ribs and pelvis in connection, closing the pages of the book. When you get to a point you feel like your ribs are starting to lift, pause at that position, take a breath in, expand, and then try and float them back a bit further on the breath out. Do another couple. And it's done. So that was a little bit different today than usual. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a nice day. I'll see you all again. Bye bye.